I must just say from the outset, it's really great. I know most of the guys in the panel. It's an honor to sit with you. Specifically, Steve, we've known each other for a long time, and Doug, in fact, all of you have always been part of this conference, so really great to have you here. Maybe just a word that you'll see that I will not ask many questions, for example, about the KT deal with Telkom, about the local loop unbundling or those issues from Telkom. The reason is that it's kind of legal processes are pending, and I think we've all seen that ask a legal question of Telkom like, how are you? And they'll keep you busy for half an hour and then question you why you asked it in the first place. So we'll steer clear of those legal issues from Telkom. But Steve, maybe to start with you, we've seen a big shift from Telkom. Telkom is really not the company that we used to. You've launched ATA and everybody expected it to behave like a part parastatal, but all of a sudden they came with very aggressive pricing. Telkom itself has moved from a slow-moving company to launching many promotions, free ADSL promotion for 3 months without any obligation, and even uncapped services at affordable rates. What's happening at Telkom? Why is this happening now?
Well, thanks, Rudolph. Telkom's big drive in terms of strategy is towards convergence, and there are 3 key parts of convergence which we have in our toolbox. It's fixed. It's now mobile, and it's the IT services. So we're driving all of those together, and there are a lot of good products that can come out of that, and it can really enable the country, be it consumers or business customers. And obviously, data is a key part of this, but especially broadband. So in the consumer space, we want to be really competitive and offer the customers what they want. In the Telkom business area, which is really the part that I come from, we really want to enable our small and medium business customers through broadband. And so we've launched a whole lot of new offers which really give the business customers not only the broadband, but it's the connectivity, it's the voice, and a whole lot of IT services that go with it. But we really want to be an enabler, and so we're taking a much more aggressive stance. And of course, you hear from Amit Maraj later regarding what ATA is doing.
Thanks very much. Matthew, over to you. Just maybe before I shoot the first question, you've recently stepped down as CEO, and can you tell us what's behind that decision and what's next for you?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Rudolph, for having me. It's been a real honor. Seems like I got lost on the way without the mountain. So yeah, it's interesting that you say step down. I'd perhaps say more stepped aside. It depends on which way you look at it. But yeah, look, I've been running the company for 14 years. And you know, it gets to a stage in its life cycle where you may have a skill set for creating companies and growing them, but it's not necessarily the day-to-day that is the challenge or the skill set that's required going forward. So, you know, I've spent the last couple of years putting a fantastic team in place. Tim White-Gutting joins us. He's no stranger to the industry. He'll be taking over the CEO position. And of course, Rupert Bryant, our co-founder and COO, will be heading things up. So, yeah, for me, I guess I'm looking for a different type of challenge now, and but like the ISP industry will always be in my heart, and I look forward to interacting from a board and shareholder level in the next 5 years. So yeah.
So, thanks very much. While we're speaking about boards and these things, Doug, you guys are delisting. What is behind this delisting, and can you just tell us, will it change the way you operate? Will it give you more freedom? Can people expect more innovation and so forth from Vox Telecom going forward?
It'll give us a little bit, relieve the pressure a bit, but not much. I mean, our primary shareholders are private equity banks, so they're going to want their pound of flesh. But what we could probably make a lot of short-term sacrifices for long-term gain, which we haven't been able to do in the public environment because the pressure to produce results every 6 months is quite intense. There's obviously a cost advantage on that side. It's a good way for the management of Vox and the team to get back in as part of the get part of the investors. And so that all in all, and also it was an opportunity. You can do a lot with a high share price, you make acquisitions, cheap acquisitions, etc. And a low share price, obviously you can get the business back at a reasonable price. So there's a lot of business decisions, but overall, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference to the way we operate.
Thanks. Angus, over to Neotel. Neotel has taken a lot of flack. They've really been lambasted by consumers, saying that you've not done enough, and in the residential space you haven't thrown enough resources at the consumer market. Does the consumer market remain core of Neotel's strategy?
Yeah, I think, well, first things first, yes, it does. Consumer for us does represent a smaller part of the business. It's about 10% of our turnover. So consumer has not been the larger part of the business, but absolutely we are committed to the consumer space, and absolutely we are doing things. Just in this year, we've seen very strong growth on the consumer side since we've launched the cordless home phones and our New Connect Home packages. We've positioned ourselves in that market to play to the strengths that we have there. We have a particular strength in that we are able to price very aggressively with voice. We believe we have a very compelling home voice product, and we can bundle that well with an internet product where we are still extremely competitive in terms of pricing and positioning. So we're not aiming to play at the top end of the speed market in home connectivity right now. One of the reasons for that is we're still waiting for things like local loop unbundling to happen, as you know. But at the moment, certainly, we believe we have a very compelling instant connectivity solution for the home space, and that's where we are focused. And that's across, we guess at the moment, about 2.5 million households are within our coverage. And inside those areas, we've also started to push further down into the market. So with the prepaid packages that we have very aggressive prepaid pricing, I think is best in the market, prepaid pricing on voice. And if you watch the space, you will be seeing some prepaid pricing on data as well.
That's good news. Steve, back to you. You obviously have done good things in the ADSL market. You've upped the speeds of two of your services. It looks like you're aggressively punting the service. But all talk is about fiber to the home. We currently say with everybody saying that it's not sustainable, but it is a thing for the future. So it's kind of a catch-22 situation. Is Telkom looking at fiber to the home, and how much life is left in your copper local loop when it comes to access?
Right. Okay, so you're quite right. The business case for fiber to the home for the consumer space is a very difficult one. We tend to use the copper, and there's a lot you can do with the copper. So if you get closer to the customer with fiber to the curb, you can get really good speeds. If you're talking about a greenfield area rather than where you've already got copper, it certainly makes sense. So we're continuously exploring opportunities and when the technology is ready. So it's not, I wouldn't rule it out. So we will continue to basically enhance our offerings. We've done a lot with converting our ADSL to ADSL 2+ over the last few years, and we'll continue to do so. Fiber to the business is obviously another story. We do a lot of that. We have a lot of fiber in place, 140,000 kilometers of it, and we're aggressively offering that through our Metro Ethernet product. We've dropped the prices recently, made a lot more affordable for customers. We have some 250 POPs across the country. So really for the business, fiber to the business is really a reality today, and it's becoming a lot more affordable. But fiber to the home is something that we are exploring, but really in the right case.
Okay. And you think copper has a few years left in it with the technologies coming out, ADSL 2+, VDSL?
Yes, I do. We definitely can exploit it. It is obviously a continuous investment where you have to continuously keep maintaining that copper and replacing it where it's beyond its life.
Sure. Matthew, over to you. When it comes to ADSL, Web Africa has gone into the business market with an uncapped ADSL product. But to date, you have not launched uncapped ADSL into the consumer market. Can we expect it anytime soon? I mean, Telkom has already done it. You don't want to lag behind them, do you?
Next question, please. No, it's completely unsustainable, you know. No, I'm kidding. So, the thing is, we got ragged over the coals for that one. No, the thing with uncapped is that yes, I think the market has shown that it's not going to go away. And ultimately, you have to listen to what your customers are saying. So, when it was a big challenge for us when our friend Rudy and the boys at Naspers dumped a lot of money in the market, and it was a big challenge for us because we're little guys. We're not backed by a major multinational. So, the thing is that it was tough, but we've weathered that storm very well, and I think. It goes to show that there's demand on the uncapped side for a good quality uncapped product, and our business uncapped has been doing very, very well, and it's taken off very nicely, and that's actually given us a lot more. We've learned a lot of things there, and we can let's just say there's some interesting things coming. Yeah, and I need to speak to the new CEO about that.
I didn't catch a yes or no there.
Yes.
Great stuff. Douglas, back to you. Speaking about innovation and so forth, you're obviously not small, but you're not as large as the guys like Vodacom or MTN. But you've always come into the market and you've made a good success out of innovative services. You came to the market with stuff like Fishbone and good voice over IP products. Can you give us a taste of what's maybe on the horizon? Are we going to see more of this, more disruptive services from Vox?
Hopefully, but what we've done is we've spent a lot of this last year fixing up our network. We basically, on the business side, it's all Metro E, and that's what we want to focus on. We don't want to sell smaller sizes, sort of 4 megs and up. And then any IP service that you can imagine, we've limited our focus on. So if it's a service we can deliver by IP, we will do. In the process of cloud computing and all the latest trends, we've picked up some very good products. We've got a product called PathView, which is a very simple product, but very complex behind the scenes, where you can put on the networks and measure the network exactly. It's a fantastic product. It's taken off very, very well. And that's critical. That's going to be a key driver for us going forward. It starts at sort of 600-700 Rand a month going up, so it's affordable. And it's essential if you use IP-centrics or something like that. We find that the problems start on the LANs. You've got to fix the LAN up first, and then you need to pinpoint where those problems are. Otherwise, it's like looking for a needle in the haystack. The new provisioning stuff we've rolled out now, we rolled out on our equipment, has enabled us to measure and control traffic right down to the nth degree. So, for example, we can provide Wikipedia and Khan Academy, for example, free. We can provide certain types of traffic free, or we can charge more. So, you always build your network for a peak. We can charge more for abusive behavior. Instead of taking it on the chin and losing money, you can, if the guys are using like peer-to-peer traffic during your peak times, just charge more. It's an easier way to govern it than restricting it. And this is going to give us a huge amount of advantages. We can give, for example, free Facebook. We can charge different prices for different types of traffic. If it's more expensive traffic for us to carry, we can charge more, etc. So in that way, we're going to differentiate ourselves, and I think that will give us the ability to make any product. Only our imagination is going to limit us there going forward.
And that will count for the broadband space as well, ADSL space?
Very much broadband and very much mobile.
Okay.
So our big focus is mobile consumer, especially at the bottom end of the market, the LSM sort of 4, 5, and 6 side of the market and that side.
Great stuff. Angus, over to you. There has been quite a bit of criticism regarding your technology choice. You've put your money on CDMA and WiMAX, and it looks like LTE is just killing the market. We see LTE being rolled out globally. Are you sad about this, your technology choice? Do you still feel it is the right choice? Does it serve your needs?
Yeah. Maybe that question's been asked so many times, people often forget what we said before we invested in this. CDMA has actually served us amazingly well, and the reason it served us amazingly well is that the original logic behind in deploying CDMA was twofold. One is that it is by far the most cost-effective way for us to have entered the market that we entered. It's enabled us to deliver home phone services without copper wire. It's enabled us to cover 2.5 million households. 800 megahertz gives us bigger coverage than the other next biggest spectrum that you can get. It's enabled us to get those services out there and to deliver them at a price which is affordable. We've been able to enter the market delivering wireless broadband services over the top of that as well. And just on the technology front, frankly, this is a technology that is got 300 operators globally. There are 575 million subscribers on this platform. It's growing, biggest growth currently coming out of places like the Far East. It's easily one of the biggest technologies. Obviously in the US with Verizon, Sprint, etc. We've seen iPhones launched on it recently. It's the big technology in Korea, which I think everybody's talking about nowadays. So we don't have any doubts about the technology. What's very important is it puts us on the LTE roadmap. And that's very important because we see this as a roadmap. There are some other technologies, I won't mention one in particular in South Africa, which are absolute dead-end technologies, which have declining numbers globally in the thousands and which are, where networks are literally shutting down by the month. That's not where we are. We're on the LTE roadmap alongside Verizon, Sprint, and other players like that. So that's definitely where we see the technology going. Just to comment on WiMAX, we've used WiMAX in a very different position. We don't use WiMAX as a mobile technology. WiMAX for us is a point-to-multipoint technology. We're using it to deliver our near-broadband, fixed broadband solution. Near-broadband, if you look at the fiber and the WiMAX version, without any doubt, and you're welcome to come and check this out, is absolutely the best internet broadband available in South Africa. Our customers tell us that. It is unshaped, uncapped. We have packages up to symmetrical 15 megabits per second on fiber. It is absolutely the best broadband available. It's available where we can get to with fiber. We have hundreds of buildings that we are in and rolling that out as access to buildings. On the WiMAX side, we have coverage in areas within the same cities where we can deliver similar services up to 8 megabits per second on WiMAX. So in terms of technologies, we've used them in a particular way, but we don't have any doubt about the choice.
So what you're saying is your CDMA choice was better than iBurst.
I didn't say that, you said that.
And maybe a quick question. Now, as I said, we're not going to really, because of the LLU process that's going on, we can't really get into the depths of it. But I think a fair question to all the panelists is whether this process, not really the LLU, because we all know that LLU can have benefits and it has various possibilities, but this process has currently been instituted by ICASA. Do you think, firstly, LLU will happen by the end of the year? Secondly, do you think it will make a difference within the next 12 months? And from a panelist, there's two questions, maybe a no-no or no, two answers, just a no-no or no-yes. Doug, you've been outspoken. Firstly, do you think LLU is going to happen before the end of the year?
No, definitely not.
And do you think it will make a difference if it does?
It will make a difference, but it's probably too late.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah, look, I can give you our official position. Look, we're concerned about the process, and we also have concerns. We have concerns about what's been achieved in other parts of the world where it has been applied. It's an enormously expensive process, and somebody's got to pay for the LLU when it's implemented. So we have a lot of concerns, and the government has an agenda for infrastructure investment to get to rural areas, and LLU doesn't solve any of these problems. And it's also quite right. I agree with Doug. It's a bit late. I mean, there's an enormous amount of progress that's been made with mobile technology. So in a way, one of the biggest local loops is actually radio. So we have articulated it in the ICASA hearings and in the press. So we do have concerns about LLU.
Angus, I agree. I'm sure you agree completely. So can we go to Matthew, or do you maybe want to add something?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen this year, but
actually, just a joke. Angus, just very shortly, please. Do you think it's going to happen before the end of the year?
I was thinking of saying yes, but then Steve intervened. So, look, realistically, I mean, I think we're far too close to the end of the year for anybody to get anything done. So I guess that's a no. Is it going to make a difference? Yes, but let me just tackle why. You know, this has come up in multiple arenas, and there's a mantra which has been repeated many times, and it's come repeatedly from Telkom, that this doesn't solve anything, it doesn't fix rural areas. Sure, no problem, but let me just put that in perspective for you. 50% of ADSL in South Africa today is SMEs. Okay? It is the preferred connectivity for SMEs. Those are the job creators in South Africa. LLU is not about connecting rural households. It's about job creation. It's about jobs, jobs, jobs. 60% of jobs in South Africa are created by SMEs. That's why we want LLU. and not just in all the urban areas. The important difference between, for example, Telkom's wireline network and everybody else that has built networks to date is that wireline network gets to a lot of smaller towns and cities. Our challenge is not Sandton. We have fiber in Sandton. We have fiber right outside here. Our problem is not here. Our problem is in smaller towns and cities, in fact, quite large cities that we do not have coverage. We saw the Infraco network earlier. On that backbone network, we have about 130 places where we have points of presence that we can drop off into towns and cities around the country. At the moment, in general, we can't get beyond a small area in the center of those towns because we can't get into the exchanges, we can't get out to the consumers and to customers and business customers in those areas. That's what LLU is about. So that's why we think it needs to happen.
Matthew, firstly, do you think much is going to happen before the end of the year?
No.
Okay, so not a vote of confidence for Icasa there. So the next part, if something happens, do you think it will impact ADSL pricing or ADSL rollout before the end of the year or within the next 12 months? Let's say that.
I'm not going to comment on the timeframes, but it definitely will have a very big impact. It has everywhere around the world, and I think it's, I also strongly agree with Neotel's position on the fact that it will create a lot of jobs. But also, I think I want to highlight one fact, and that's on the issue of penetration. We're currently sitting around 18% penetration if you compare the number of copper lines that are DSL enabled. I mean, that's shocking. The UK is sitting on 98%. Okay, I'm not talking about the rural areas. I'm talking about the actual number of lines out there. We're just not utilizing it. We're not competing with mobile. And, I think Telkom really needs to take a wake-up call and realize that it's an opportunity. It's not a huge boogeyman over there coming to take away their revenue and profits. It's actually a big opportunity. And I wish that we wouldn't fight each other and, that we create a lot more revenue in the space and a lot more business. Yeah.
Okay. If you've got questions from the floor, can you please put up your hand while they are roaming mics? Do you have any questions from the floor so far? Okay, while we're waiting, Steve, maybe you must just say, or tell us a bit more. We've seen quite a few moves from Telkom. You've bumped up your 512 guys to 1 megabits per second free of charge. You've bumped up the 4 meg guys to 10 megs in certain regions, and I believe it's tens of thousands now that's been bumped up. Can you tell us what's going forward? Are we going to see 20 megabits per second ADSL2 plus services? Are we going to see 40 meg VDSL with video on demand? What can we expect on the copper infrastructure in future?
Okay, so we continuously invest in the network. So as I mentioned earlier, we've over the last few years been installing quite a lot of ADSL2 plus, which enables 10 megabits per second. We continuously look to invest further. We do run trials on a continuous basis to test technologies. So, and all I can say is we'll continue to invest in the network. It's difficult for me right now to talk too much about it. We're in a closed period. But just to guarantee you, we're not going to stop investing in the network, so there will be better things to come.
And does that mean you'll invest in even your copper network, maybe renew the copper and so forth?
Yeah, look, we don't do any really new areas with copper. We do continuously upgrade the copper where it's not adequate and to make sure the service levels are as good as we can get it.
Okay, so essentially not greenfield to do fiber or something else, but if it's an existing copper infrastructure, you'll replace copper as needed.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Matthew, maybe you've been quite outspoken about the LLU, that you think it can make a difference, and there's a partnership between you. I'm sure you and Steve will have a nice discussion there of how you're not going to take his money, that you really want to help Telkom. But can you tell us what will make it easier for you to compete? What can Telkom do to make you eat a bit more of their pie?
Okay, how much time have we got? Look, I think, in the regulatory space, there's a lot of improvements. And let me just also, take cognizance of the fact that Web Africa, we're not really at the size where we can actually make a big difference on that scene. I think hats off to Rudy and MWeb and also IS for pushing that. I think they have the budgets to do that. And I'll be watching it with great interest. But I think, where I'd like to come from is from an operational and from a process perspective, and Steve, there's probably not too much to do with you, but especially on the wholesale side, I think there really needs to be a greater push, even within Telkom, for a separation between the wholesale and because we want to be feeling like the wholesale guys are on our side, and it sort of feels like that, but then we get, it's always this back and forth. And for example, like to move a line between ISPs at the moment, it's a nightmare. I mean, you got to. If we want to move a line from MWeb to us, for example, it's got to go back to Telkom. It sits there 6 months, it gets lost, and then it comes back to us. Sorry, 6 weeks. But it's a really difficult process for the consumer. So it should be easy. Consumers also feel like, especially in the tech space, that don't move your line with the ISP because that's a bad idea. We need to get rid of that whole view and that skepticism and fear, and get rid of all the issues in terms of being able to swap providers. It should be easy. Lock-in you shouldn't be able to try and lock your customer in. They should be able to choose and go wherever they want. And hopefully Telkom can make that easier for us and the consumer.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
And Douglas, you've spoken about your plans in the mobile space. There have been criticism of the mobile operators that their wholesale models are not as wholesale as it should be, that their wholesale model costs significantly more than their retail pricing. What would you like to see from them to make your products easier to develop and more cost effective?
I think, as Lars pointed out, we need one network eventually, and part of it is wholesale. And I think what will happen is, we're obviously buying bandwidth from Vodacom in bulk, less than they sell it to their small consumers. So that's not competitive. But I think what will happen in the next year that will become competitive. Telkom have obviously shown the way to a large extent. They're much more of a wholesale player than before. And I think the mobile operators have to do it now. They have to come to the party.
And are you talking about products possibly like IP Connect that should come in our own pricing, Bitstream and so forth, so the same kind of product that Telkom has effectively launched in the wholesale space. Would you like to see the same thing, more affordable APNs, products like that with the mobile providers?
If the APN's competitive, we'll be able to compete. At the moment, it's obviously not competitive.
Okay. And then back to Angus. Steve has also said it's a difficult business case. FTTH, you've got fiber to the premise already. As you said, your new broadband product is, people are raving about it. I'd love to get a test line for a year or so into our offices. We'll push some bandwidth through it and see where it fits in. But is it a difficult business case for Newtel as well? Can you see it working in South Africa in the current environment?
Let's do something about that line of yours. You just happen not to be in the right place. Just to address the whole FTTH thing, I think, firstly, just to indicate that we don't have any immediate plans on FTTH, and I think that's well known. But perhaps what's not that well known is that we do think that there are ways to do it. It really does involve other players. I think it's not a question of simply the telco stepping up and rolling out network, because that's not always been the way to get FTTH to happen. There have been government initiatives in some countries, but the one that we think potentially has the most traction is a model which gets developers and homeowners involved in the investment. There's a concept, if you just Google it, called homes with tails. And we would be very open to discussions with players who are going to try and make that kind of plan work. The bottom line is that the initial investment in the last physical mile, or probably a few hundred meters, is the thing that sinks that business case. That's the thing that kills it. So you can have a R1 million house that doesn't have fiber to the home because of a 10,000 Rand fiber. There's something wrong with the economics. Obviously, for the telco to roll out, millions of 10,000 Rand fibers sinks the case. So we do need more creative ways to do it, and we're certainly open to any ways that can be done. We've done it very aggressively in fiber to the curb, fiber into buildings in business districts, and I think that's where we've had a lot of success. That's why our MyBroadband is really working. So it can be done, but there's a kind of trigger level of, if you like, amount of services delivered in an area and the underlying capital investment to be covered. So we think it's possible, but at the moment we don't have immediate plans for it.
Good stuff. Okay, questions from the floor?
There were questions from the IRC. Am I on? check.
Okay, so quick. If you could just a question, if there are questions, just keep it very concise. We are under time pressure, lunch is nearly needs to be served, so concise, and please aim it at a specific speaker. That makes it easier.
Yes.
Okay.
These questions are for Telkom, and there were a number, but just two. The first was about line upgrades. When are more exchanges going to be upgraded to 10 megabits per second? And they did ask about 20, but they'd really like 10 to start with. And the second question is about more speed increments on the ADSL packages. Right now you've got an order of magnitude jump from 1 to 10. What about 2, 4, 8, and so on and so forth, in between that range between 1 to 10 at less discrete jumps? Thanks.
Okay, so we on this program we are improving the speeds of ADSL. So if we just take the existing technology, which is ADSL 2+, in order for that to work and provide better speeds, we need Metro Ethernet in the backhaul. As I mentioned earlier, we've rolled out a lot of Metro Ethernet, so there's a process of turning up these new DSLAMs and putting Metro Ethernet in. So that has happened in a lot of cases. In some cases, it's just hasn't happened yet, so there will be a gradual improvement on that. So in terms of, I think the other question was about speed. So we offer a 384 really at the bottom end, and that's to pick up people who want to get into it but not pay a lot. So we really sell that product as cheap as we can. And then the next level up is the 1 megabits per second product. Then we have a 4, which is really possible if you've got ADSL, the plain ADSL, and then there's the 10 megabits per second. And all of it is obviously depending on the quality of the copper and the length of the copper. So you may take a 4 meg service, and to get a stable service, it might only be 2 megabits per second. But we push the speed up as high as possible, but at the same time remaining stable. So the high speeds are possible. We are looking into it, but it's obviously a business case, and as I said earlier, I can't talk too much about that at the moment.
Okay. But I think the question was also, does it make sense for you to launch 6 megs or 7 megs? So have increments between 1 and 10, or does the product suite just become too complicated there?
No, look, I think it's cluttering the market, and if you buy a 4 meg today, you may only have a 2 meg in terms of what the line speed can what the copper can provide. So it doesn't make sense. It just clutters it, and really the experience, once you're getting about a 1 or 2 megabits per second for a lot of what you're doing, browsing and so on, it doesn't really make a huge difference. So I think it's really to keep the product set simple and less cluttered. I think that's really our position.
More questions from the floor? There's a question there at the back. There's a question here in the front. Again, if you please can keep it concise. Doug, maybe you can just give us a bit of a taste of what you're thinking in the mobile space. Will it be a voice type product or data while we're waiting to get to these guys?
What we'd like to do is what we are doing is producing our own data packages, where we will provide a couple of hooks to get customers, like sort of freemium sort of products. So we'll provide a lot of free services, like, for example, Facebook. At the same time, we're tailor-making products for corporates on the corporate side, because, for example, if they want this card to go into, say, an Apple ecosystem, we can charge very, very competitive prices for Apple, or be free for that scenario, and provide sort of a hybrid of post-pay, prepaid, etc., because the corporate might be in charge of the post-pay, but if the rep, for example, goes over his usage, pay prepaid. So effectively, the solutions we want to produce on the broadband market will be governed on price rather than gigabits. So we'll give a guy a 500 Rand a month solution. He can use anything. He can use any broadband solution, any hotspot, ADSL, etc.
So essentially a one-price product, ADSL, something like a hybrid product of data.
Product, yeah.
So 500 Rand of data, and you can use it whatever.
And obviously, when our network's not busy, we'd like to give free peer-to-peer. If the guy wants to download his movies, it's with pleasure at sort of 2 o'clock in the morning, and that sort of side of things will operate.
So Linux distributions, please. There was a question there at the back. Yes. And there was a question here at the front. In the front.
This is live. Good morning. I think the panel all agrees together that LLU is not coming this year, but they believe that it will make an impact when it does come. When it does come, is this going to relate from a telecom point of view? Because we all believe that it should lead to naked DSL. Is that going to be a reality?
Okay, I guess the question is naked DSL. Are you guys considering naked DSL?
So naked ADSL is not something that we promoting. The reason for that is that when you carry ADSL over a line, there's the cost of the copper that needs to be covered. So at the moment, the voice line that you hire basically pays for the copper, and you run ADSL over that. So if it was to be naked DSL, you'd obviously still have to pay for the cost of that copper. So it wouldn't reduce the cost to the customer. So there seems to be very little point in doing that, and from a regulatory or business perspective, we haven't seen the need to do that yet.
Okay, and just maybe, Matthew, if you can just add in naked ADSL, will that be something that tickles your fancy?
I think it's very sexy.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think, I'd love to see that. And I think everyone in the industry would, but especially the consumers, because, I mean, who wants to, you want a DSL line, you want to put a VoIP service in there, you don't want to have to go pay $120 for telecom tax. I mean, let's be perfectly frank about it. It's just about revenue protection.
And Angus, I assume you guys are going to unbundle your wireless local loop as well to make this possible?
Interestingly, those who've been following the local loop unbundling process will know that wireless has been included by CASA in the list. Our stance is actually very simple. We've always maintained that the whole LLU model is based on facilities leasing. Those guidelines are quite clear. They do cover everything. The reason why we haven't been keen on the whole wireless unbundling issue, and I think the mobile operators, obviously have a similar issue. But frankly, it's not about whether or not we think it can be or should be unbundled in the longer term. It's actually fundamentally about getting the thing done. Right now, we have the opportunity to get on with what was announced by the minister 3 or 4 years ago. And that was with all the guidelines that need to come in place for ADSL unbundling and local loop unbundling for copper. That's been done in 26 countries in the world. We just have to cut and paste and do it. There's a lot of debate about what wireless unbundling actually means and how you would do it and so on. That could take us 6 or 9 months to get through. And we do need to get the copper done first.
Yeah, but after the copper is done, let's say it does happen, are you open to have your wireless local loop unbundled?
As I said, we have in principle no objection to the use of the facilities leasing guidelines for unbundling any networks.
That's good news. There was a question at the back, and there's a question over here.
It's geared towards telecom again. For consumers who have DSL services that are provided over WiMAX because there's no copper, do you have any plans to give them higher speed WiMAX services?
So the WiMAX is a technology which we use to serve a particular need, and that was really where there's cable theft. So today we offer 512 on the service, and pretty much that's where it is. We could possibly consider increasing it to 1 megabits per second, but basically it's a technology that we have frozen. It's particularly to cover those areas that had a particular need. So it's not an area which we're putting a lot of product development into, but it is something we can consider. But essentially at the moment it's just a 512 data speed.
Okay. There's another question there. Cara, there's another person there at the back who's had his hand up for quite some time. But there's a question. Yes, along?
Good morning. As a company that operates in the underserviced areas, my question is actually directed to ICASA. What measures do you have to make sure that Vodacom, MTN, and SLC maintain their commitment of providing broadband services to those underserviced areas as part of their license requirements?
Okay, thanks for the question, but unless somebody wants to speak on behalf of ICASA, I know that Telkom often likes to do it, but I don't think there's... unfortunately, as we said, Steve is one of the good guys, so he's not in the legal department, so I don't think he has a skill set to speak on behalf of them. So unfortunately, good point that you make, but unfortunately, I don't think anybody on the panel is brave enough to speak on behalf of them. It's a question there at the back. Can you ask?
Hello. Hi. Just a question to Telkom again, Steve. With regards to South Africa and all the copper theft that's going on, what has been done to well, by Telkom to either protect that copper or replace it with a different technology?
Okay, it's a good question, thanks. So look, copper theft is a huge problem for us. It's costing us hundreds of millions. And we've tried all sorts of things, hiring security companies, and in some cases the security companies steal the copper. And also break into nearby homes and things like that. So it's a really big challenge. So what we have done is, as I said earlier, we did use WiMAX to solve the problem to some extent. But what we've done since we've launched ATA, we've built a lot of base stations, particularly in the city areas, and so that means that we can provide either ATA services or a service called fixed line lookalike. So that obviously gives the customers, if they're in that coverage area, is a good service. We also have a roaming deal with MTN. So wherever MTN has got coverage and we haven't, we're able to provide services. So what we are saying to customers, look, if we can't replace the copper, and sometimes we've replaced it 5 times in a year, we're saying, look, just take an ATA service and we'll make a plan to make sure you get good signal, and might mean an antenna on the roof. So that's really the solution, is to use the mobile technology to actually solve that problem, because unfortunately copper is very vulnerable, and in certain areas you just can't keep replacing it. So that's really our solution to the problem. It is a bit of a challenge for businesses. So there are sometimes technologies we can use, like microwave, but that is costly. So we have a very wide range of satellite services. We're busy revamping that. We've just installed a new hub where we'll be able to do a new service, which is going to be called Space Stream Home. And it gives you telephone lines using VoIP, and it provides you a really good data speed for internet connections. And we're going to really push the price of this as low as possible. I can't say what price it is, but it's of the order of 400 to 500 Rand a month, and that is another solution, including your voice and internet. But that really hasn't been launched. We haven't done all the numbers yet, but we're looking at about March next year. So we're trying to solve the problem through a number of different methods, but it's really satellite and mobile technologies at the moment, and then where it can be justified, microwave solutions.
Just maybe a question to follow on here, Steve. Obviously, copper theft, it influences you, but it influences Eskom, influences the Gautrain. Do you think copper theft should be made a crime of sabotage rather than just a crime of
So
theft?
we've been working for some time to have copper declared a precious metal, and I don't think I haven't got the latest on that. I don't think we've succeeded. But certainly there is a lot of talk about improving the situation. But it really haven't got to that. There's a lot of other vehicles for other ways for people to get copper out of the country. So it's a really big challenge, I think, for all of us who do have copper lines strung out in the middle of nowhere.
Sure. Matthew, over to you. Obviously, you, as a smaller player, you're very price sensitive in terms of the input cost, whether it's IPC or whether it's your staff costs or just national bandwidth. The wax cable is being played up already, similar to Seacom. Seacom had a big impact. When Easy came along, there wasn't much of a shake-up in the market at all. Now the talk is again wax. Do you think wax will drop prices? Will it make a difference to your business?
Definitely. Yeah, and it has already, actually, because what happens is that people start negotiating contracts in advance. So, yeah, we predicted 2 years ago that the cost of bandwidth, let's leave IPC out of the question, but in terms of international bandwidth, it's almost the inverse of Moore's law, the doubling of speeds or whatever every year. So we're actually seeing that the bandwidth the cost of bandwidth is actually halving every year, every 12 months. And so it's very interesting. And wax is coming in. I don't know when the latest on the lighting it up is. Maybe
Angus, maybe you can step in and tell us. And also, do you believe it will make a big difference? Angus.
Okay. Well, yes, obviously. Let me just change hats. Let me speak as the co-chair of the WAX consortium. 2 things that, in terms of timing, we are still on track for Q1. That means realistically, sort of by the end of Q1 2012, we'll see it coming live. There isn't an exact date yet, but we're pretty on track. I think, as everybody knows, the actual physical cable is fully laid. We're busy doing the commissioning and so on all of the sites. So certainly Q1, end of Q1. And just a piece of interesting information is at the Submarine Networks World Conference in Singapore in September, as a consortium, and remember, this is very much a South African-led consortium. As a consortium, we won the trophy as the best cable project in the world. So yes, I think WAC's going to make a difference.
Great stuff. Douglas, do you agree? Are you enthusiastic about wax, or is it just another one?
No, enthusiastic. I think that, as Matthew said, the prices are already dropping because of wax's influence. I mean, it started already. It'd be cheaper to put our mail servers in London just now, what it is already, than to keep them in Joburg.
So enthusiastic. Maybe just one closing question for all the panelists. We've run out of time. But one panelist, one question for panelists, and just one issue, not a long discussion. Just tell me what you want to see to make your business better. The mobile operators all said they want spectrum to make them function more effectively and give better and more affordable services. If all the panelists, Douglas, what would you like to see if you see one thing happen?
I'd like to see the mobile operators have a proper wholesale platform.
Great stuff. Steve?
Well, look, I'm from telecom business. The area that we really want to see happen is small business and medium business really succeed with whatever we do for them.
Great stuff. Angus?
I'm going to turn that around a little bit. I'm not going to point fingers at anybody else. There's lots that can be done by regulators and so on to make things change. I think the biggest change for Neotel needs to be, people have seen us in the consumer space. They've seen us as the fiber guys. They know we dig up the roads. I think the thing that we need to get across to the world is what we are. If you go up to the IP level, we need to be seen as what we are. We provide a very high percentage of the total connectivity into South Africa today. We provide a lot of the backbone networks. We are the only tier 1 ISP in Africa today with started communications. And I think in the internet space, the IP space generally, we've got content delivery networks. We've got a lot of capability in the business space. If anything, I think what we would like to see is our ability to get that message across more broadly in the South African market.
Yeah. Matthew?
I'd like to see Telkom really coming to the party and helping us against the mobile operators.
Great stuff. To the panelists, thank you very much, gentlemen, and thanks for the interesting discussion. I appreciate it.